On a freezing winter night in the city, a 17-year-old black girl pedals her broken bicycle through empty streets, racing to her second job. She's already late, already warned one more time, and she's fired. But at a lonely bus stop, she sees an old man in a thin coat, trembling and lost, asking strangers for help that never comes. Stopping means losing everything she has. Walking past means keeping the little she's fought for. She stops anyway. She doesn't know he's a billionaire. She doesn't know this one choice will save them both. What happens next will leave you speechless. Before we dive in, tell us in comments where in the world you are watching from. The evening air bit sharp and cold, the kind of winter chill that crawls beneath your collar and makes you walk faster, head down, mind elsewhere. The streetlights flickered to life one by one along the quiet avenue, casting long shadows across the pavement. At the corner bus stop, beneath a faded transit sign, an elderly man stood perfectly still. His coat was too thin for the weather, the fabric worn at the elbows and frayed at the hem. His hands, pale and trembling, clutched a crumpled piece of paper. His eyes moved slowly across the faces of people passing by, families bundling children into cars, teenagers laughing into their phones, commuters marching toward warmth and dinner and the comfort of home. But no one looked back. He was invisible, not because he was hidden, but because people had decided not to see him. His lips moved, forming words that dissolved into the cold air unheard. He stepped forward once, twice, reaching toward a woman in a business suit. She sidestepped him without breaking stride. A couple walked around him as if he were a lamppost. A group of college students passed so close their backpacks nearly brushed his shoulder, but their laughter never paused. The old man's confusion deepened. His mouth opened again, a question forming, but no one waited long enough to hear it. He looked down at the paper in his hands. The ink was smudged, the edges soft from being folded and unfolded too many times. He whispered something to himself, something about a bus route, a number that didn't match the sign above him. His fingers tightened on the paper as if it were the only thing tethering him to reality. The street around him moved with purpose, with direction, with certainty. But he stood frozen in the middle of it all, a man lost not just in location, but in time itself. And still, no one stopped. That's when Maya turned the corner. 17 years old, shoulders heavy beneath the weight of a backpack stuffed with textbooks and a work apron. Her sneakers were scuffed, the soles wearing thin from walking too many blocks between school, home, and her part-time job at the diner on 5th Street. She was late. Again. Her shift started in 20 minutes, and she still had 6 blocks to go. Her breath came out in quick white puffs as she picked up her pace, eyes fixed on the sidewalk ahead. She almost didn't notice him. Almost. But then she heard it, a voice, barely more than a whisper, fragile and frightened. "Excuse me, do you know where Maple Row is?" Maya slowed. Her first instinct was to keep walking. She didn't have time. She couldn't afford to be late again. Her manager had already warned her once this week. But something in that voice, something raw and unsteady, made her stop. She turned her head and saw him, the old man, standing there like a ghost among the living, clutching that piece of paper, his eyes wide and searching. For a moment, she just stood there, caught between two choices. The world around her kept moving. Cars hummed past. A bus hissed to a stop a block away. Someone's phone rang. But in that small pocket of cold air between them, time seemed to pause. Maya took a breath, let her backpack slide off one shoulder, and walked toward him. "Maple Row?" she asked gently, her voice cutting through the noise. The old man's eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time that evening, someone was truly seeing him. His shoulders dropped slightly, relief flickering across his face. He nodded, his voice trembling as he repeated, "Maple Row. I need to get to Maple Row." Maya glanced at the paper in his hands. The address was faint, but legible. Maple Row. She knew that street, or at least, she knew it used to exist. It had been renamed years ago, turned into a development district on the east side of town. But she didn't say that yet. Instead, she looked up at him, at the confusion etched into the lines of his face, at the cold redness creeping into his cheeks. "When's the last time you were there?" she asked softly. He blinked, his brow furrowing. I don't know. I thought I could take the bus. Number 12. It used to stop right here. Maya's heart sank. The number 12 route had been discontinued over a decade ago. She didn't know how long this man had been standing here, waiting for a bus that would never come, asking for help from people who had already decided he didn't matter. She looked around. The street was emptying now. The rush of evening commuters had thinned. The bus stop sign swayed slightly in the wind. No one else was coming. No one else was going to stop. Maya made a choice. Okay, she said, pulling her phone from her pocket. Let's figure this out together. The old man stared at her, his eyes glistening. His lips parted as if to say something, but no words came. Instead, he nodded, a slow, grateful nod. And in that moment, something shifted. Not just for him, but for her too. Because Maya didn't yet know that this one small act of kindness, this decision to stop, to listen, to see, would unravel a story far bigger than either of them could imagine. She didn't know that the man standing before her, lost and trembling in a threadbare coat, was once one of the most powerful people in the city. She didn't know that his name had been on buildings, in newspapers. Maya's thumb hovered over her phone screen, but she didn't unlock it yet. Her mind was racing, calculating time like a math problem she couldn't afford to get wrong. 6 blocks to the diner. 20 minutes if she ran. Minus the 5 minutes she'd already lost stopping here. That left her with maybe 2 minutes to spare before her shift officially started. And that was if she left right now. Her manager's voice echoed in her head, sharp and impatient. Maya, I like you. I really do. But this is a business. One more time you're late, and I'll have to let you go. I've got 3 other people who want your shifts. She couldn't lose this job. She couldn't. The $70 she made in tips on a good night wasn't just pocket money. It was groceries. It was the electric bill. It was the difference between her grandmother's medication getting filled on time or getting pushed back another week. Her grandmother, who had raised her, who had worked 2 jobs her whole life and now could barely climb the stairs without stopping to catch her breath. The woman who never asked Maya for anything, but whose worried eyes said everything when the rent envelope sat unpaid on the kitchen counter. Maya looked down at the old man. He was swaying slightly now, his balance unsteady, like a tree in wind. His breathing had grown shallow, visible in the cold air, short, panicked puffs. He wasn't just confused. He was scared. Scared in the way people get when the world stops making sense, when nothing looks familiar anymore, when everyone around you is moving with purpose and you're the only one standing still, lost. She bit her lip. Just go. A voice in her head urged. Call someone else. Call 911. They'll handle it. You've done enough by stopping. You can't save everyone. But even as she thought it, her feet didn't move. The old man's hand reached out, not quite touching her, but close enough that she could see how badly it was shaking. Please, he whispered, and the word cracked in the middle. I just need to get home. Maya closed her eyes for half a second, exhaled, and made her choice. Again. Okay, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Let's figure out where home is. She stepped closer, gently guiding him to sit on the bench at the bus stop. He sank down with a grateful sigh, his legs seeming to give out more than lower him. Maya crouched in front of him, her knees pressed against the cold concrete. Do you have an address? Something with your name on it? A wallet, maybe. He fumbled in his coat pocket, his fingers clumsy and slow. After a moment, he pulled out a torn bus ticket, old, faded, the kind they hadn't used in years, and a small brass locket on a thin chain. He held them both out to her like offerings, his eyes searching hers for understanding. Maya took the locket carefully. It was tarnished but elegant, the kind of thing that had once been expensive. She turned it over, and there, engraved in delicate script on the back, were 2 lines. Arthur Vale 91, Ridgeview Lane. Her breath caught. Arthur Vale. The name meant nothing to her, but the address, that she knew. Ridgeview Lane was on the far north side of the city, up in the hills where the houses had gates and long driveways and views that stretched for miles. It was the kind of neighborhood where Maya had once delivered groceries during a summer job, where she'd walked up steep streets and wondered what it was like to live in a house with more bathrooms than people. It was at least 8 miles away, maybe more, and uphill the entire way. She looked back at the old man, at Arthur, and felt her stomach drop. There was no bus that went there, no train, and calling a ride-share on her phone would cost more than she'd make tonight, even if she did make it to her shift. Arthur was watching her, his expression hopeful and fragile, like a child waiting to be told everything would be okay. Maya glanced at her phone. 15 minutes until her shift. If she left now, she might still make it. Barely. She could hand him the locket, tell him to stay put, call the non-emergency line, and let someone else take over. It was the reasonable thing to do, the smart thing. But even as she thought it, she knew she wasn't going to do it. She wasn't going to leave him here. Maya stood up, brushing the cold from her knees, and looked down at Arthur with a resolve she didn't entirely feel. "Sir," she said quietly, "I'll take you home." His eyes widened, confusion and gratitude mixing in equal measure. You will." She nodded, already moving before doubt could settle in. Her bike was locked to a post 15 feet away, a battered old thing with peeling paint and a seat held together with duct tape. It had been her mother's once, passed down like an heirloom no one else wanted. The chain squeaked, the gears stuck, and the handlebars tilted slightly left no matter how many times she tried to straighten them. But it was hers, and it still rolled. She unlocked it and wheeled it over to where Arthur sat today. He stayed at the bike as if it were a spaceship. I can't ride that," he said, his voice small. "You don't have to," Maya replied. She helped him stand, her hand firm under his elbow, and guided him to the back of the bike where a small metal rack sat bolted above the rear tire. "Just sit here and hold on. I'll do the rest." It took 3 tries to get him seated. His balance was unsteady, his movements slow and uncertain. But finally, he was perched on the rack, his hands gripping the sides of the seat, his legs dangling awkwardly. Maya pulled off her thin jacket, already inadequate against the cold, and wrapped it around his shoulders. He started to protest, but she shook her head. "You need it more than I do." She climbed onto the bike, planted one foot on the pedal, and pushed off. The first few rotations were shaky. Arthur's weight threw off her balance, and the bike wobbled dangerously before she found her rhythm. But then they were moving, rolling forward into the night, leaving the bus stop and its empty promises behind. The road stretched out before them, a ribbon of asphalt that climbed steadily upward. The wind cut through Maya's sweater immediately, biting at her arms and chest. Her breath came harder as the incline increased. Her thighs burned. Her calves screamed, but she kept pedaling. Behind her, Arthur murmured something she couldn't hear over the wind. Then louder, "Lila." Maya glanced back, startled. "It's Maya, sir. My name is Maya." But Arthur's eyes were distant, looking at something she couldn't see. "Lila, you shouldn't be out here. It's too cold. Your mother will worry." Her chest tightened. She didn't correct him again. Instead, she just kept pedaling. The city thinned around them. Streetlights grew sparser, casting long pools of orange light that faded into darkness. They passed empty lots, chain-link fences, warehouses with broken windows. The road narrowed. Trees leaned in from the sides, their bare branches like skeletal fingers against the night sky. Maya's hands were numb now, locked in a death grip around the handlebars. Her lungs ached. Every breath felt like inhaling glass. But she didn't stop, couldn't stop, because behind her, Arthur was humming something, an old tune, fragile and off-key, and somehow that small sound kept her moving. They climbed higher. The hills rose steep and unforgiving. Twice, Maya had to get off and walk the bike, her legs shaking, her vision blurring at the edges. Arthur held on, silent now, his head bowed against the wind. Halfway up the steepest hill, Maya's legs gave out. Not dramatically, just a quiet failure, her muscles refusing to push anymore. She stopped, gasping, and let the bike tilt to the side. Arthur nearly slid off, but she caught him, steadying them both. "I'm sorry," she panted. Just need a minute." There was a gas station at the top of the hill, its fluorescent lights harsh and artificial. Maya walked the bike toward it, Arthur still seated, his weight making every step feel like dragging a boulder. Inside, the warmth hit her like a wave. Her fingers tingled painfully as feeling returned. She guided Arthur to a plastic chair near the coffee machine and told him to wait. He nodded, docile now, his eyes glassy. Maya approached the counter. The clerk, a kid not much older than her, barely looked up from his phone. She counted out her money. 3 crumpled dollar bills. The last of what she had until payday. 1 tea, please, she said. Hot. With honey if you have it. She brought it back to Arthur, wrapping his trembling hands around the styrofoam cup. He stared at it for a moment, then up at her, and something cleared in his eyes. Just for a second. Just long enough for him to whisper, "Thank you." Maya nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She waited while he sipped slowly, color returning to his cheeks. Then she helped him back onto the bike, pulled her jacket tighter around his shoulders, and pushed back out into the cold. 3 more miles to go. 3 more miles, and her shift was already lost. When they finally reached the crest of Ridgeview Lane, Maya thought she'd made a mistake. The houses here didn't just sit on streets, they dominated entire hillsides. Each one was set back from the road behind walls of stone or iron, separated by perfect hedges and curving driveways that disappeared into darkness. This wasn't a neighborhood. It was a different world entirely. She checked the locket again under a streetlight. Number 91. She kept pedaling, slower now, her body running on nothing but stubbornness and the weight of a promise made. Then she saw it. The gate came first, tall, wrought iron, intricate scrollwork forming patterns that caught the moonlight. Beyond it, a driveway lined with old oaks led up to a house that could only be called a mansion. 3 stories of stone and glass, windows glowing warm against the night. Gardens stretched out on either side, manicured even in winter. A fountain sat silent in a circular courtyard. Maya stopped pedaling. Her mouth fell open. This is your home." Arthur lifted his head, and for the first time since they'd started riding, his eyes focused. Really focused. He stared at the house, and something like relief washed over his face. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, I'm home." Before Maya could figure out how to get past the gate, lights flooded the driveway. A door burst open at the house, and a man came running, middle-aged, dressed in slacks and a sweater, his face twisted with panic and relief. "Mr. Vale," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Mr. Vale, oh my God." He reached the gate and fumbled with a remote. The iron bars swung open with a mechanical hum. The man sprinted down the driveway toward them, nearly tripping over himself. 2 more people emerged from the house behind him, a woman in scrubs and another man in a security uniform. "Sir, we thought. We've been looking everywhere. We called the police." The first man reached them, his hands hovering over Arthur as if afraid to touch him, afraid he might disappear. Then his eyes landed on Maya, taking in her worn sweater, her battered bike, the exhaustion written across her face. "Who are you? What happened? Is he hurt?" Maya helped Arthur off the bike, steadying him as his legs found solid ground. "I found him downtown," she said, her voice hoarse. "At a bus stop. He was lost. I brought him home." The woman in scrubs, a nurse, Maya realized, rushed forward and gently took Arthur's arm, checking his pulse, his temperature, asking him soft questions. Arthur answered in murmurs, "Calm now. Safe." The first man turned back to Maya, and his expression shifted from panic to something else. Or disbelief. You brought him all the way from downtown? Tonight? In this cold?" Maya shrugged, suddenly aware of how she must look, shivering, sweat-soaked despite the cold, her hands red and raw from gripping the handlebars. He needed to get home. The security guard stepped forward. "Miss, please, come inside. You must be freezing. We'll get you warm, get you food." "And a car," the first man interrupted, pulling out his phone. "We'll have a driver take you wherever you need to go. And please," he reached into his pocket, pulling out a wallet. "Please, let us compensate you. What you did tonight." "No," Maya said quickly, taking a step back. The word came out sharper than she intended. She softened her tone. "No, I don't want money. But surely we can." I didn't do it for money, Maya said, and she meant it with every fiber of her exhausted body. I just wanted to help him get home. The man stared at her, his mouth opening and closing, unable to find words. The nurse had guided Arthur toward the house now, her arms supporting him. He turned back, searching for Maya with his eyes. When he found her, he raised one trembling hand in a small wave. "Thank you," he called out, his voice stronger now. "Thank you, Lila." Maya's chest tightened. She waved back. "You're welcome, sir. Stay warm." The first man tried once more. "At least let us give you a ride, or some food for the road, or a glass of water," Maya said quietly. "That's all." They brought her water in a crystal glass that probably cost more than her bike. She drank it standing in the courtyard, unwilling to step inside, unwilling to stay any longer than necessary. When she handed the empty glass back, she climbed onto her bike. "Thank you for taking care of him," she said. And then she turned around and pedaled back into the night, leaving the glowing mansion and its stunned occupants behind. Her legs screamed. Her hands could barely grip the handlebars. And somewhere across the city, her shift had started an hour ago. She didn't know if she still had a job, but she knew she'd made the right choice. The next morning came too quickly and with too little sleep. Maya's body ached in places she didn't know could ache. Her shoulders were stiff, her thighs sore, her hands still tender from the cold. But she got up anyway, pulled on her work clothes, and made the walk to the diner. She knew before she even opened the door. The morning manager, not the one who'd warned her, but the older woman who sometimes slipped Maya extra fries, looked up from the register with an expression that said everything. Pity mixed with resignation. "Maya," she said softly, "I'm sorry." Maya's locker was in the back, past the kitchen where the line cooks were already working, past the storage room with its towers of canned goods and industrial-sized ketchup bottles. She turned the corner and stopped. The locker door hung open. Empty. Everything she'd kept there, her spare shirt, her notepad with phone numbers, the photo of her grandmother she'd taped to the inside of the door, all gone. Cleared out, and taped to the metal surface was a yellow termination slip, official and final, with yesterday's date stamped across the top. Reason for termination: excessive tardiness. No call, no show. Maya pulled the slip off slowly, her hands shaking. She read it twice, though the words didn't change. Then she folded it carefully, slipped it into her pocket, and walked back through the diner. The manager tried to say something, but Maya just shook her head. She didn't trust her voice. Outside, the morning was gray and cold. Maya started walking, not toward home but just walking. She needed to move, needed to think, needed to figure out how to say the words she'd have to say when she got back. Her grandmother was in the kitchen when Maya finally came through the door. She was sitting at the small table, bills spread out in front of her like cards in a game no one could win. Her reading glasses sat low on her nose. She looked up when Maya entered, and her eyes, those warm, knowing eyes that had seen Maya through every scraped knee and broken heart, went soft with concern. "Baby, you're back early." Maya tried to speak. Couldn't. Her throat had closed up, tight and burning. She pulled the termination slip from her pocket and set it on the table among the bills. Her grandmother picked it up, read it, and let out a long, slow breath. She took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. When she looked up at Maya again, there was no anger, no disappointment, just a tired, infinite love. What happened? So Maya told her. About the old man at the bus stop, about the decision to help him, about the long ride up the hill, the mansion, the choice to refuse money. She told it quietly, standing in the middle of their small kitchen with sunlight filtering through curtains that had been mended 3 times. When she finished, her grandmother stood up. She crossed the room and pulled Maya into her arms, holding her tight. "Oh, baby," she whispered, "you did the right thing. But we need the money," Maya said, and her voice finally broke. "Grandma, we need it. The rent is due next week, and your medicine." "I know." Her grandmother pulled back, her hands on Maya's shoulders. "I know, but you did the right thing anyway. That's who you are. That's who I raised you to be." Maya nodded, but the tears came anyway, hot and bitter, running down her cheeks as the weight of it all crashed down. The bills on the table. The empty refrigerator. The overdue notices that kept coming in envelopes with red stamps. The electricity that flickered sometimes at night when the payment was late. All of it pressing down on her chest until she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't you dare apologize," her grandmother said firmly. "Not for having a good heart." But that night, alone in her room with the lights off and the city humming outside her window, Maya stared at the ceiling and wondered if a good heart was enough. She thought about Arthur Vale, safe in his mansion. She thought about the termination slip, now folded in her desk drawer. She thought about the stack of bills growing on the kitchen table. She didn't regret helping him. Even now, even with everything lost, she didn't regret it. But she was scared. Terrified, actually, and she didn't know what came next. She fell asleep that way, exhausted and worried, her mind cycling through possibilities that all ended in the same dark place. Miles away, across the city in a bedroom with high ceilings and soft light, Arthur Vale opened his eyes. Really opened them. The fog that had clouded his mind for days, maybe weeks, he couldn't be sure, was gone. He sat up slowly, his body stiff, and looked around the familiar room. He was home. He was safe. And somewhere in the returning clarity of his thoughts, a face emerged. Young, kind, determined. A girl on a bike who had stopped when no one else would. Arthur reached for the phone on his nightstand. The knock came the next afternoon, soft but deliberate. 3 taps, measured and polite. Maya was at the kitchen table, laptop open to job listings she couldn't quite bring herself to read. Her grandmother had gone to a neighbor's apartment to help with some sewing work, one of the small cash jobs she picked up to fill the gaps. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic below. Maya approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, tall, perhaps 50, wearing a tailored gray coat and holding a leather portfolio. Everything about her was polished, professional, expensive. Maya's stomach dropped. Process server, collections agency, landlord's lawyer. She opened the door a crack. Chains still latched. Yes. The woman smiled. Not the plastic smile of someone delivering bad news, but something genuine and warm. Maya Johnson. Who's asking? My name is Catherine Reeves. I'm the estate manager for Arthur Vale. She paused, letting the name settle. May I come in? I promise, you're not in any trouble. Quite the opposite, actually. Maya hesitated, then unlatched the chain. She opened the door wider, though she didn't step back. Is Mr. Vale okay? Is much better, thanks to you, Catherine said. In fact, he's been asking for you all morning. He remembers everything now. The bus stop, the cold, the ride. And most importantly, he remembers you. Maya felt her chest tighten. I didn't ask for anything. I told them that. I know, Catherine said gently. That's exactly why he wants to see you. Not to pay you off or make this transactional. He wants to thank you properly. To talk to you. She glanced past Maya into the small apartment, taking it in without judgment. There's a car downstairs. Would you be willing to come with me? Maya looked down at herself, sweatpants, an old hoodie, mismatched socks. Now. Only if you're comfortable. But Mr. Vale is quite insistent. He's been worried about you. Something in that statement, the idea that this man she'd helped was now worried about her, cracked something open in Maya's chest. She nodded slowly. Let me change. The car was sleek and black, the kind that looked like it cost more than her grandmother's apartment building. The interior smelled like leather and something subtle and expensive. Catherine sat beside her, making gentle small talk about the weather, the traffic, anything to ease the tension radiating off Maya's rigid posture. They drove through the city and up into the hills, retracing the route Maya had pedaled 2 nights before. But in daylight, in comfort, it felt like a different journey entirely. When they passed through the iron gates of 91 Ridgeview Lane, Maya's hands were clenched in her lap. The house looked even more imposing in the afternoon sun. Grand but not gaudy. Old money whispered through every stone and window. Catherine led her inside through the main entrance, past rooms filled with art and antiques, down a hallway lined with photographs in silver frames. They stopped at a door that opened into a sunlit sitting room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens. Books lined the walls, and in a chair by the window, wrapped in a blanket despite the warmth, sat Arthur Vale. He looked different now. Alert, present. His eyes tracked them as they entered, and when they landed on Maya, they filled with recognition and something that looked almost like relief. "Maya," he said, his voice steady now, no tremor or confusion. "You came." She stepped forward, suddenly shy. "Mr. Vale, I'm glad you're feeling better." He smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Please, sit. Catherine, would you give us a moment?" Catherine nodded and slipped out, closing the door softly behind her. Arthur gestured to the chair across from him. Maya sat, perched on the edge, her hands still clasped together. Arthur watched her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the brass locket, the same one Maya had found, the one with his name engraved on the back. He turned it over in his hands. "Do you know what this is?" Maya shook her head. "My daughter gave it to me," Arthur said quietly. "Lila, 30 years ago, before she passed. Inside is a picture of her and her mother, my wife, Eleanor. They are both gone now, have been for a long time." He looked up at Maya. "When I get confused, when the memories slip away, this is the only thing that sometimes brings me back. Your name, my address, the people I loved." Maya's throat tightened. "I'm a very wealthy man, Maya," Arthur continued. "I built a financial empire over 40 years. My name is on buildings downtown. I've advised presidents. I've made and lost fortunes." He paused. "But none of that mattered when I was standing at that bus stop, lost and invisible. I was just a confused old man that everyone walked past." "You weren't invisible to me," Maya said softly. "No," Arthur agreed, his eyes glistening. "You saw me. And more than that, you stopped. You gave up your job, your time, your last $3 to help a stranger who couldn't even remember his own name half the time." He leaned forward. "You didn't just save my safety, Maya. You saved my dignity. You treated me like a person when everyone else treated me like a problem." Maya blinked back tears. "I just wanted to help you get home." "I know," Arthur said. "And that's exactly why I needed to see you." Arthur set the locket down on the small table between them and folded his hands in his lap. "I've spent the last 24 hours thinking about what you did for me, about the choice you made, and I want to help you the way you helped me, freely, without strings, simply because it's the right thing to do." Maya's pulse quickened. "Mr. Vale, I told you, I don't want." He raised a gentle hand. "I know, you don't want payment. You made that clear, and I respect it deeply. But hear me out." He leaned back slightly, his gaze steady and kind. "Catherine did some research. I know you lost your job. I know your grandmother is on a fixed income and that you've been trying to cover gaps she won't ask you to fill. I know you are 17, brilliant from what your school records show, and planning to apply to college next year with no clear way to pay for it." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks, part embarrassment, part something she couldn't name. "You looked into me, only to understand how I could help," Arthur said. "Not to invade your privacy, but to offer something meaningful." He paused. "Maya, I run a foundation. We fund scholarships, community programs, healthcare initiatives, and I want to offer you several things, not as payment, but as investment in someone who's already proven they have the character the world desperately needs." Maya's hands gripped the armrests. "What kind of things?" "Full funding for your education, whatever school you choose, whatever you want to study. No loans, no debt." He ticked them off calmly, as if reading a grocery list rather than offering life-changing support. "A position at the foundation, if you're interested, working on youth outreach programs. You'd help design initiatives, manage community projects, paid work that aligns with who you clearly already are. And finally, medical coverage for your grandmother. Whatever she needs, for as long as she needs it." The room tilted. Maya heard the words, understood them individually, but together they seemed impossible. Unreal. She shook her head slowly. "Mr. Vale, I can't. I didn't help you so you'd." "I know," Arthur interrupted gently, his voice warm. That's exactly why you deserve this. Do you understand? If you'd helped me expecting something in return, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But you risked everything. Your job, your security, your future, for a stranger who couldn't even remember his own name. That kind of character doesn't need conditions. It needs support. Maya felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back hard. It doesn't feel right. Taking this from you when I just did what anyone should do. But anyone didn't do it, Arthur said, his voice firmer now. You did. And the world is full of people with talent and potential who never get the chance to use it because they are too busy surviving. I don't want that for you. Not when I have the means to change it. Maya sat in silence, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to refuse, to walk away with her pride intact, to prove she hadn't helped him for gain. But another part, the practical part that had been counting dollars and skipping meals and wearing shoes until they fell apart, knew what this meant. Not just for her, but for her grandmother, for their future. I didn't help you for anything in return, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Arthur smiled. I know. That's the only reason I'm offering. Maya took a shaky breath. If I accept, I want to earn my place. At the foundation, I mean. I don't want charity. I want to work. To contribute. I wouldn't expect anything less, Arthur said. And frankly, I think you'll run circles around half my current staff within a year. A laugh bubbled up unexpectedly, breaking through Maya's tears. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. Arthur reached into his pocket and pulled out a card, extending it to her. My direct number. Call me when you're ready, or if you have questions, or if you just want to talk. Maya took the card, her fingers trembling slightly. She looked down at the embossed letters. Arthur Vale, Chairman, Vale Foundation, and then back up at the man who'd been lost and invisible just 2 nights ago. Thank you, she whispered. No, Arthur said softly. Thank you. 6 months later, Maya pedaled down a familiar street, but this time her backpack was lighter. Inside were notebooks from her community college courses, sociology, public health, nonprofit management, all paid for in full. Her bicycle was the same, still squeaky, still tilted slightly left. But everything else had changed. She worked 3 days a week at the Vale Foundation now, coordinating a program she'd helped design. Seen and Heard, an outreach initiative for isolated seniors and elders with memory loss. They partnered with community centers, trained volunteers, and created safe spaces where people like Arthur, people who'd been invisible, could find connection and dignity. Maya had presented the program herself at the Foundation's board meeting, her voice steady despite her nerves, and watched as rooms full of executives nodded and approved funding. Arthur had sat in the back that day, his eyes bright with pride. He'd become something unexpected in her life, not a benefactor, not even just a friend, but something closer to the grandfather she'd never had. He invited her and her grandmother to dinner once a month at the estate, insisting Catherine prepare her grandmother's favorite foods. He asked about Maya's classes, her ideas, her dreams. And slowly, the lonely quiet of his massive house had filled with laughter and conversation again. Her grandmother's health had stabilized too. The medications she'd been rationing were now plentiful. The specialists she'd avoided because of cost had become regular appointments. The tension that had lived permanently in her shoulders had eased. She'd even started painting again, something she hadn't done since Maya was small, and her watercolors now hung in Arthur's study. Maya turned onto Ridgeview Lane, making her weekly visit to drop off reports and have tea with Arthur. But today, her route took her past the old bus stop first. She always went this way now, a small detour that added 5 minutes to her ride. She slowed as she approached it. The same faded transit sign, the same cracked bench, the same streetlight that flickered when it rained. A few people stood waiting, a young mother with a stroller, an older man in a construction vest, a teenager scrolling through his phone. Maya stopped completely, 1 foot on the ground, balancing the bike beneath her. She looked at that bench and remembered the cold, the exhaustion, the impossible choice that hadn't felt like a choice at all. She remembered Arthur's trembling hands, his confused eyes, the way everyone had walked past him like he wasn't there. And she remembered deciding to stop. That single moment, that pause in her rushing, that decision to see someone when it was inconvenient, costly, even foolish, had changed everything. Not just for Arthur, though it had certainly changed his life, but for her too. It had opened doors she hadn't known existed. It had connected her to a purpose bigger than survival. It had shown her that kindness wasn't weakness, and that sometimes the smallest acts carried the greatest weight. The light changed. The people at the bus stop boarded a newly arrived bus. Maya pushed off, pedaling up the hill toward the iron gates that now opened automatically when she approached. Arthur was waiting in his usual chair by the window, the locket still in his pocket, though he rarely needed it anymore. When she walked in, he looked up and smiled, that warm, grandfatherly smile that had replaced the confusion and fear she'd first seen. "There's my favorite coordinator," he said. "Come, sit. Tell me about your week." And Maya did. She told him about the new volunteer training session, about the elderly woman in the West Side program who'd started playing piano again after 20 years, about her sociology professor who'd asked her to co-author a paper on community engagement. She told him about the future she was building, one rooted not in what she'd been given, but in what she'd given first. Outside, the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. And somewhere down below, at a bus stop on a cold corner, the world kept moving. People rushed past each other, eyes down, minds elsewhere. But every now and then, someone stopped, and everything changed.